Stand by for the Brewery Underground podcast.
In Nashville's harbor wise, cracked and bruised when leaves the skies. Stephen Scott, they lead the way. Brewery Underground, night and day. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite.
Well, hey, everybody. Here we are back on the Brewery Underground podcast where, Scott Turon, one of the great things about what we do is, we go to breweries, but we also talk about many of the great breweries across the country. We're in Nashville. We talk about them, but we expand. We go to other places. And
and usually for good reason. We got another one. We got
another
We
one.
got
And
another
today,
great brand. Yep.
we are actually going to your home state of New York, a little far north. So bring it in. Let's start the party, man.
Yeah. We're going to go to Utica, New York. We've got Fred Matt from FX Matt. You may know them as Saranac Brewing, right? Do I have that correct? You are the president, fourth generation of the Matt family. Oh,
Remiss if I don't invite you up for a live tour and we could do another interview live up here sometime, because if you haven't been to Utica, you have not lived. And Scott can attest to upstate New York is one
Yep.
beautiful, and it's God's country.
It is. It is. It is. Now, this time of the year up there is kind of why I came down south. However, it is ice out here. Never been to work in 3 days because of it, but we're not prepared. But it's the cold and the snow is the reason I moved from that area. But you are right. In the spring and the summer, it is gorgeous. Everything is green and blue. The skies are blue, and the weather doesn't get too hot, especially particularly compared to Nashville.
Yeah, I mean that's the good thing about this area. We're starting to get the big storms, but we never got the big storms, and it's beautiful here. It's the standard of living is great. It's very affordable, and I'd say that upstate New York is probably an area that's going to come alive as we go forward. It's hasn't hit economic booms yet, so real estate's cheap, the schools are fantastic, and people are great, and you can have a nice life in an area that is starting to kind of boom. So it's a nice place to be.
What's the population of Utica, roughly?
About 50,000. I think
Okay.
the surrounding area is about 200.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I've not had the pleasure of going to Utica. The farthest north that I've been in New York would be probably a ways over, in Buffalo. So I've been up there, not in the wintertime, in the summertime. But definitely have to put Utica on the list there.
Exactly. Put a big star on it.
Yeah,
Yep, definitely,
Well,
definitely.
and we will circle Saranac Brewing as the priority for being there, priority number one for being
the
there.
Mecca.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fred,
Well,
you mentioned Nashville earlier. I'm just
Yep.
wondering, have you been often? Have you been here a few times?
I've probably been there 6 or 7 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you
Last
come
time
back,
I was there was CBC. So I've
Oh,
been
yes.
twice for the CBC.
okay.
Once because Taylor Swift wanted me there. I can't go into that one though.
That was the. Did we get some torrential downpours during that
that was
time?
Oh, that was-
unbelievable.
That was for that
Yes.
concert? Yeah, I know
Yeah.
somebody that went to that, and I think it ended at like 3 o'clock in the morning or something.
Yeah. I mean, what a great person though, that, you saw, we were in the hotel right near there, that, the little kids and all their moms were all dressed up, and the moms were starting to drink, and the little girls were like all upset that they may not see the concert. And she went on, I guess, at like 11 or 11:30 and played till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And, just what a great, person to do something like that.
She did, and there were a lot of kids that didn't go to school the next day
Yeah.
with permission.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, let's start, Steve. Let's start with what you're drinking, because I think Fred's going to really appreciate what you've got there.
Yeah. Well, we came prepared, Fred. We came prepared.
I love
Here
it.
we go, man. I got the
Oh,
Utica
the
Club.
UC. Yeah.
Yep.
And
And
I've got-
I was
I've
going
got-
to
oh,
say
go ahead,
there's a
Steve.
lot of, sorry, I'm going to steal your thunder, Scott. There's a lot of history behind this beer, right?
Yeah. Yep. So Utica Club is first beer sold after Prohibition. We have the #1 license. My great grandfather had 3 children, but 2 boys in the business. And my great uncle Frank basically lived in Washington during Prohibition trying to get it repealed, and got to know the right people and was first in line when it was repealed. And so we've got the first license and the first beer sold after Prohibition. We got a great letter we just found, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, that is a letter on December 5th or December 4th to a customer saying, you can come and pick up all the beer you want, bring cash. 1933. So
Wow.
Steve, show that
32.
can again.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you
Here we
can,
go.
that blue banner at the top,
Yeah.
right, that's exactly
Yeah.
what that says.
Yeah. And, you know, it's,
Like-
I find it amazing because, you know, my kids are low 30s, and, you know, I would say I'm going to use a generalization that's probably not fair, but that generation doesn't seem to like history or understand history. And yet Prohibition is something that just resonates with them and they love
Mhm.
it. So
Maybe
it's
because
cool.
at that time, was the brewery called the West End Brewing Company?
Yeah. So it was the West End Brewing Company, and really the West End Brewing Company until 1980. In 1980, we renamed it in honor of my great grandfather to the FX Matt Brewing Company. And then we really were pushing it as Saranac Brewing Company because craft was going like that. And to make the connection of FX Matt to Saranac, it was just easier to say Saranac Brewing. And then when we bought Flying Bison 2 years ago, Flying Dog 2 years ago, we went back to FX Matt Brewing Company because Saranac, saying Saranac on Flying Dog was just weird. So we just said it's Flying FX Matt Brewing Company, and we've got all these wonderful brands that we make and sell around the world.
Hey, so where does this beer rank for you on the beers that you like to drink at your brewery?
So I like that beer when I'm having kind of pizza, or I describe it like a milk, but I am a craft beer drinker through and through. So,
Yeah.
you know, if we're just sitting talking, yeah, I'm going to take a IPA or a pale ale. You know, if I'm having a piece of pizza, that Utica Club is absolutely delicious.
Do you remember the first time you had it?
Yeah, so when I was one of 6 kids, 5 boys and my sister, and my father used to come home, you know, he'd come home late, like 7:30, couldn't have dinner till 7:30. He would pour a beer while he made himself a martini. And if you wanted a jigger of beer, we stood in line and he would pour you a jigger of beer. And yeah, I remember just being able to get my hand onto the counter. So I was, you know, I don't know, 4 or 5, and you could get a little jigger of beer, which we had quite frequently. And then on Saturday mornings, my dad generally went to work, and he'd take the 3 oldest, and we'd go to work, and we had the carbon paper so we could draw while he was doing work. And then we also found downstairs, there was at the time probably, weren't there on Saturday, but probably 50 women that worked downstairs. They all had penny candy drawers. So we'd go and eat all the penny candy and leave them notes of thank you, we ate your candy. And then right around 11:30, my father would say, we're going to take a tour through the brewery. And then we'd go home and swim, play tennis or whatever.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, because you were surrounded by you were in the beer business. It would be nothing to have beer at the house,
Yeah.
right? Even at a young age.
And yeah, I mean, it wasn't
it's your
today. I mean,
livelihood.
if you give somebody, a young kid, a sip of beer, I mean, you're going to get shot.
Right.
You know, in those days, it just wasn't, people didn't get worked up over that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it was your livelihood at that point, too.
Yeah,
I mean, you're completely
exactly.
surrounded by it. I mean,
Exactly.
Scott, what are you drinking, man?
I want to show you what I started with. And I've got, I'll get to that, but so I've got the white
Oh,
out.
nice.
And the reason I've got this, Fred, I've got 9 different Saranacs up here with me right now. I get the Pale Ale, the Black Forest, the Adirondack Lager, the Golden, Frosty Pills,
Nice.
the Clouded Dream, I got the Legacy IPA, and then the Hoppy Hour. And the reason I have all this is I was in Syracuse, Ogdensburg, actually, in October, I guess it was. And I stopped at Price Chopper and on my way back and just loaded up on these mixed cases.
Nice. Nice.
So, and I meant to give, gave Steve that one. I meant to give him some more. We were going to do it before this ice storm hit. I got more for him, so he's going to have a bunch of this too. But I've got a plethora of your beer over here right now.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
When
absolutely.
you mentioned that, this is how the world's changed. In 1994, we came out with trail mix, and we came out with trail mix because, I was kind of out selling, and, I'd go on premise, and we had Adirondack lager basically at the time, black and tan pale ale. Well, Adirondack lager, Sam was already there. Pale ale, in a lot of places, Sierra was already there. And in a black and tan, they had Guinness. And so I couldn't get any on-premise sampling. And so our artist it made this table tent that was 3 bottles. And, I said, Tom, we can't sell this on premise. They're not going to do it. And I ripped it apart, and there was a 6-pack in front of me, and I threw it on the 6-pack, and I said, maybe we ought to do a mix pack. And this woman that worked for us, Marie, said, and we'll call it trail mix. And we literally, from the first shipments of that thing just exploded. And
Wow.
I don't think we had it. Sam Adams came in probably 3 years after us, but stumbled calling it American something, didn't put Sam Adams on it. We probably had a 5-year run of that thing just opening up every single market for us.
Wow.
In today's world, you'd have competitors within a month, just
Yeah,
boom. And that's,
copycats.
competition's competition, but you'd like to have, when you come up with a unique idea, you'd like to have some space where you can develop that idea without having people just trample it.
Yeah. So you guys were one of the originators of those mixed cases.
Yeah, I don't know anybody else who had done that before us. And then we did 12 beers of Christmas, which literally had 12 different beers. And that was the first holiday mix pack. And those trail mix and 12 beers. One of my favorite stories was that there was a guy named Scott Van Roo that called me up. The first time we did 12 beers of Christmas, we did 80,000 cases. And my father came into my office and said, how the hell are you going to sell 80,000 cases? And I go, well, actually, they're already sold.
Wow.
So I get this call, and this guy goes, Scott Van Roo from Sam's Club, just wondering why you went in and offered us this package. And I said to him, is this a joke? And he goes, no, I work for Sam's Club. And I go, can I call you back? And he goes, sure, why? And I go, because it's just weird that my customer is calling me. I should be calling my customer. So I hang up, I call him back. He goes, you feel better now, Fred?
The dynamic was the way it should have been, right?
Yeah. He became
Man.
kind of a buddy. He was a great guy.
Fred, we did an episode back in May 2025, it was episode 74, and it was Brewers Association rankings, and they had come out with their rankings of like the top, I think it was 50 size-wise craft brewers in the country. And we kind of went through each one, and yours was like 7. You guys were like 7 on the list, and I was like, and I didn't know at that moment because it was FX Matt, and I did a deeper dive and realized it was Saranac, and then that's how it was like, holy crap, that's from kind of where I'm from, the 7th largest, craft brewery in the country. So it's a big deal. It's kind of how it put you on our radar. I wanted to talk to you because it's a huge deal. That's a lot of beer that you're selling.
Yeah. Yeah, we are selling a lot of beer. And I mean, yeah, I think we've done a good job. I mean, I think that, what really built the Saranac brand and has helped us as a company is that I always say we make really great beer, but we also charge it a lot. What built Saranac was we were better value. So when Sam Adams was like $6.99 a 6-pack, which was most prevalent in the early 90s, we were $5.99. And the reason we were able to do that, you had 3 people in the tier versus 4. And on our contract partnering person, we were one of those people in the tier that, Sam Adams had to pay us before they made their margin, or Brooklyn or Harpoon or whatever. But our whole philosophy is to make really good beer that we like to drink. And then, the best part of the job, honestly, is sharing that beer and drinking it with your customers. I mean, that by far and away is the best part of the job. Other than that, work is work, and it's a fun job, but it's also, I worked in advertising for a while, and everybody's like, it must be great to shoot a commercial. I'm like, yeah, come and shoot a commercial. It sucks. You're in a studio for 5 days, 12 to 15, 16 hours a day, just making sure that X happens. It's not fun. Beer is a lot more fun, but I mean, at the end of the day, we go to work like everybody else, and we have the same challenges everybody else has, whether it's people or, supply chain or increasing costs, or, we put something out that doesn't appeal to the consumer, and, now that's costly. Um, that doesn't happen very often, but, you pick, we did a orange pale ale at one point that just bombed totally. And, it was a little before the fruit beers, and you just sometimes you miss. But yeah, I'd say what has helped us generally is we're pretty good at figuring out how to delight the customer, and when you delight the customer, they just keep coming back.
We don't want to overlook one of the main headlines here. Is that you're fourth generation?
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, that's amazing. A business has been around since 1888. I mean, talk about that. I mean, the legacy and the history and the you're a part of it.
Yeah. So I think that I'd say that the thing I think's cool is that we are family owned, and I am fourth generation. I am, fortunate enough to be the one in the fourth generation that got picked to run the company. But at the same time, I, essentially standing on the shoulders of the people before me that gave me the opportunity to take the company where we're taking it today. What I learned from that generation is that, it is when you delight the customer, they keep coming back. And in the years that we delight the customers, we thrive. And when we don't, we don't. But, at the end of the day, to be a family company that still gets along and be a company that is 138 years old in March, we're in like a 1 to 3% success rate. And I think that's pretty cool. An even cooler thing that happened this week was we have a woman that's worked for us for 90 years, I'm sorry, she's 90 years old. She's worked for us for 63 years. And I took a picture of her the other day at her party in the tavern, in front of my great grandfather's picture, because he is the only person besides her to work in their 90s in this company, and likely the only person that will behind him. And so she's been here 63 years. She's still, just a wonderful. It's filled with piss and vinegar, and she calls it how it is. But I said to her yesterday, which was a real birthday, and we had kind of a company lunch. I said to her, Diane, we got to get you to 100. And she goes, Fred, I'm not going anyplace. I'm going out horizontal when I go.
What does she do for you all, by the way?
She has done almost everything. She works in finance, so she did payables and receivables. She was an accounting manager for us. Today she does kind of backup stuff, and the thing I love that she does is she's at the area where people come in, and we don't generally tend to make people wait, but she chats them up and tells them about the brewery and the history and how long she's been here, and she's worked for every Matt that's run the company. And it kind of gives a who we are. Through someone else's voice, which is really nice.
You talked about a lot of the people that paved the way before you got there. That really stands out to me because I'm sure there's stories that you have along the way, the history of the company where things could have gone south. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I mean, if you just take we managed through COVID, and I remember saying to the family board that when COVID was coming, that what I wanted to do was guarantee all our employees that they had their jobs, and whether we were working or not, they were going to get a paycheck every week, not knowing how long it was going to last or whatever. So the day really COVID hit, went and did small group meetings and said to everybody, my great grandfather managed this company through you know uh, with some bad diseases, uh, like a COVID type thing.
sure.
Yeah.
World
Yep.
wars, 13 years of prohibition,
Mm-hmm.
and we kept everybody working in all those situations. And the day COVID hit, our sales dropped by 50% for the month we were in, 50% for the next month, 50% for the next month, and you just didn't know. But our belief is when you're family, and we take care of family. I'll tell you, people really appreciated that. But there were some funny stories. I was looking out my window one day, and there was this guy Brian that had worked with me as a summer intern, and we unloaded glass trucks together and stuff like that. I look out and I'm on the phone, and for like 20 minutes we had people like picking up paper and just doing anything to stay busy.
Yeah.
He picked up one paper in 20 minutes. I'm like, I go downstairs and I go, Brian, you're getting paid right now, right? He goes, oh yeah. I said, you got to slow down. You've picked up one sheet of paper in the last 20 minutes.
Did he pick up on the sarcasm?
Oh yeah.
That's funny.
He goes, I'll get going, Fred.
That is funny.
It's hysterical. You guys have on your website, you've got this incredible, it's the coolest thing I think I've seen on the website, your timeline. It's got very historical kind of things along the way, Prohibition being one of them. But there's another one, and I love this. And I want to take kind of a little bit of deep dive into this. In 1958, Schultz and Dooley were created.
Oh yeah.
And they are epic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a following. Anybody that even sees the picture, if they don't even know the name, if they see the picture, who Schultz and Dooley are, they'll know who they are. Can you kind of explain who and what Schultz and Dooley are?
Yeah, so Schultz and Dooley were talking steins that created, in those days they started in 1959, and they were created, I don't know, I'm going to say David Ogilvy, but Ogilvy and Mather was a huge firm at the time, and we spent $3 billion a year in advertising in those years. David Ogilvy worked on the business, Mary Wells, Jerry Della Femina. These are, anybody that knows anything about advertising, they're the icons of the industry. And Jonathan Winters, who was a unbelievable comedian, he was, I don't know, like to compare him today, but he was, Bill Cosby you can't say anymore, but he was big like that. And he did all the voiceovers, and Schultz represented the German, kind of heritage of the family. And then Dooley was the Irish Stein, more the drinker. So you had the German and the Irish, and they played off as the German and the Irish in their roles. And then they pulled it out. So you had the Countess and you had all these different Steins. And the commercials won Cannes Film Festival. I mean, they're just absolutely wonderful to watch. And they have one of my favorites is Schultz and Dooley had scuba gear on, and the Countess was caught between two plates, which were a giant clam. And you see these fingers going down to help the Countess out. And then at the end, the Countess is kissing Schultz and Dooley. But they were wonderful commercials. Jonathan Winters did them till 1965, and then he apparently had a little bit of a drinking problem. And when they were actually shooting commercials in New York City, they'd lose him, and they'd have to go up and down the street looking in the bars where he was. But he was one of those just comedic guys. It was all the voiceovers, everything. And my uncle was in an event probably in 1990 and Jonathan Winters was the host, and he went up and introduced him. And Jonathan Winters said, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what your family did for me, because, you guys gave me one of my first starts, and, it really kicked off my career in a big way. And, but apparently he was a great guy. I'd never met him, but he did a fantastic job.
It even says on that little blurb on the timeline there, it says, it helped increase the sales by more than 50%.
Yeah.
It's just running those commercials.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Has it always been, I know it was a marketing thing. Has it always been a running marketing thing? Because you still sell the Steins and stuff today. I know they aren't necessarily commercials, but have they always been around since 58?
Yeah. So they originally were given as, basically sales, point of sale to bars. And then collectors started. So then we made it into a business. And, when I first came here, we would sell 20,000 Steins a year. And of everything, not only just Schultz and Dooley, but everything. And that, I will tell you, the margins in that business they were 60% margins. So it was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Today we sell about 2 to 3,000 steins. But it's, they're the collectors that are out there. They're, really loyal, headed, and some of the collections that you see are unbelievable. And they have every single stein, and all of them, every stein we've ever done is appreciated in value. I think the originals are now worth like 2,500 or 3,000.
Wow.
And actually, the ones we're doing more recently are jumping in value quicker because we're limiting to 1,000 steins, and so they sell out generally in 2 or 3 days. And then
You currently have some on the website now in the shop section. They're like superhero Schultz and Dooley.
we got the superhero and pulled it out. So we've gotten into Halloween. So we have the Grim Reaper.
Oh, how cool.
Oh my God. That is
Wow.
so cool.
And I love that.
So
The time is now.
Yeah.
We're going to take you away.
Look at that.
Do you guys have every single one of them there at the brewery just from over the years?
When I got back here, we had to go out and buy originals because we didn't have them. And the answer is no. I'm a marketing sales guy in New York, more marketing, but by the time you get done with the project, you're just so sick of it. You want nothing to do with it. And so, we don't keep them. Lately, we've been keeping them. But, no, we don't have shit.
If you ever need it, you have to go out to the collectors, right, to get them and find them. That's crazy.
Yeah.
They've got, and there's probably a million of them, but Facebook's got different things. They've got like there's a Stein Club, a Schultz and Dooley Stein Club. I saw there's a Schultz and Dooley pub in Missouri. I don't know
really? I didn't even know that. My wife's from St. Louis. I'll have to go visit it.
Yeah, there's a Facebook page for it. So my dad's got a bunch of merch, Schultz and Dooley merch, and then Scott Murdy's got some stuff too. He's got he's got like the bottle opener and the signs and all sorts of stuff because he's got.
There were knives. There was everything.
Wow,
really cool stuff.
It really, and it really stands out to me. You're talking about your marketing background. But it really seemed to stand out for me, especially on your website, is the history of the brewery. It seems like you all have always been very forward thinking of, here's our beer, but the marketing aspect of it, talk about that because it seems like that's always been a big focus of you all.
Yeah, the beer business, it's funny you say that because I think it's perceived more now as marketing. I would say in the 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s is that, breweries were, really production facilities and kind of lived by, I'm going to put great beer out and it's going to sell. I would say that when, I always tie it to when Miller was bought by Philip Morris and started doing, Miller Lite and bringing in the football guys, the NFL and the baseball players, et cetera. That really turned the industry into a marketing game versus a beer game. And, they woke up AB and AB did some tremendous advertising. And, I think that was part of the time when, regional breweries like us really had a hard time because you had the big nationals coming in and using their budget beers that, we couldn't, we had Old Milwaukee and Mill Best when I came back here was $4.99 a case at retail. and Old Milwaukee was $5.99 a case at retail. This is 1990. And Utica Club, we couldn't even get it off the line for $5.99, $6.99.
Wow.
And so that would happen in the, I always say is that the regionals started holding their price. The nationals were advertising. And as we held our price going into the 80s was really about price and quality were closely tied. So as you pulled your price back, perception of your quality went down, and we were just in a death spiral because you weren't going to make it. And my dad's belief was that if we could just hang on long enough, the markets would turn back the other way. And he actually turned out to be right in that. He got us into contract production, which helped cover costs during that time, and then invented Saranac. And his whole thing was survive, stay around long enough that the market shifts so that the small guy can compete by putting products out there that are more flavorful, higher margin, et cetera. And he was right. And, that the two things that we really benefit from today are, Saranac beer, the high margin beers, and our contract partners that we work with. 50% of our business is our own brands and 50% of our business is our contract partners. And that diversification and really getting into a more niche side of the beer business versus having to compete with the nationals who make great beer, but they can do it a lot cheaper than we can and make an awesome beer. You can't compete against that when you put advertising and great beer together and let's say distribution on top of that.
Yeah.
You can't win that game. So you gotta, if they're going that way, we gotta go this way.
Sure.
Have
No,
you
I think
seen
it
it?
is interesting. I'm sorry,
No, go ahead,
follow up
Steve.
on one point there, Scott. I think it's interesting. We like to talk about some of these things that full circle moments that happen, right? And especially in the craft beer industry right now. During Prohibition, you all had to reinvent yourself and do non-alcoholic beers or drinks, not beers, but drinks and some other things. And that's occurring again, isn't
Yep.
it?
Yeah, I would say that, I think we did well, craft has had a really good run. I think we've gotten where, I would say we did a really good job of innovation. We did a really good job of delighting our customer for a long time. But, over 30 years, you got to reinvent yourself if you're going to keep that going. You can't keep doing the same thing and putting another IPA out there and just switching the hop. That doesn't do it. And, we have somewhat become victims of our success is that, there's so many of us right now and just so many choices that, we've created a consumer that's pretty promiscuous and also confused. And there's just too many choices. And I think that we've got to, as a industry, go back to, delighting our customer and evolving as a business to what the consumer wants today. And so, for us is one of the things we're doing. We have an NA beer. I think the world's going that. So we've done this Weekend Warrior, which is a mid-strength beer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real good craft Pilsner. And one of the things, this is where you learn is that we started out kind of pushing it as 3%. Well, consumers look at it that are interested and go 3%, that thing's going to taste like shit. And so we really shifted on that and really focused on this is a craft Pilsner. It's full bodied. And by the way, it's 3%. And so that the great thing about that is that you can drink a bunch of them and feel good the next day. And for me, I like doing some lawn work outside. On a Saturday, you go in and you want to have a sandwich and a beer. Well, if I have a beer, oftentimes I want to take a nap then. But, I can have one of these little babies and get a great taste of beer and it's lower alcohol. So I think this is, I'm not a hockey player, but I love Gretzky's, skate to where the puck is going. And I think this is where the puck is going because I think that, we've got the NA drinker, 80 to 90% of those guys still like to drink beer. You've got the beer drinker that, would like to see low alcohol at some point, not no alcohol. And so I think we're right in a sweet spot. We've got a lot of work doing. I was reading Bill's thing the other day and Harry's or Ben Steinman's thing about, the education and et cetera. And I mean, what he's saying is exactly what we have to do is that you got to educate the consumer that this 3% beer is a full tasting, great tasting beer. You're not compromising and you got 3%. But I think that's a huge opportunity for us so that, I think we have generally, been good at kind of getting ahead of areas and also say that sometimes we quit too soon. We did a white IPA years ago that did exceedingly well as a seasonal 3 years ago. And then 3 years and then we tried to bring it year round and it just never caught traction. But that white IPA is basically the juicy, hazy IPAs.
Yeah.
And, had we called it a juicy, hazy IPA, it would have been probably a different story around here. A white IPA at the end of the day didn't really resonate. It did, kind of in the season we did it, but it didn't resonate outside of that. We did it kind of the winter through spring and it crushed it. But taking it into the summer never really did anything. And, in hindsight, the naming of it was the problem. But we were the first to ship a milkshake, draft that was our white IPA, not on not intentionally. It just was. It was in a keg. If you didn't turn the kegs upside down, we learned you had and the thing tasted great, but the count would see it, and it's just this milkshake of a beer, and they go, "I'm out." And then 3 years later, that thing is killing it.
Wow.
Yeah. That's all anybody wanted for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to your point on that mid-strength, Steve, the Foamy Head sent us, we got some beer friends, and they've got a podcast too, and they sent us an article about 2 weeks ago about the trend of the mid-strength beers. And
Yeah.
so you're ahead of it. You guys
Yeah.
were ahead of it, and you're on it, and you're right on the trend. It seems
You
to
can
be
say
just
I'm
like
a
Kentucky.
genius.
Yeah, he's a genius, folks.
There you go.
He's
You're a genius. Yeah. I mean, it really strikes me, Fred. I mean, you are such an expert to be able to talk about this, of saying, okay, you see the trends, and even though you all have been around forever, you can't just rest on your laurels of saying, we brew good beer. I mean, you
No.
got to keep evolving, even with that legacy and history, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I would tell you that I learned from my predecessors is that if you, I think, go through all the times our company has had to kind of reinvent itself and look for new markets or new brands, et cetera. It's a lot. And I think that the thing that a lot of our brethren in the craft is facing right now is all they've ever known is this. And I don't know if you've seen Jensen's thing, and I'll mess this up at NVIDIA, but he did a thing at Harvard University, and he said, I feel badly for all you people. You're the smartest guys in your class. Everything you touch turns to gold. Boom, 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 and just reels up. And his comment is, I don't think I could do what I did years ago, because years ago everything I touched failed. And I always say one of the reasons for our success is that we made almost every single mistake you could possibly make, and at some point you just got to go one way. And we as a company haven't benefited from. And I'm not saying that people didn't work hard to get where they did, because they did. But once they got there, all they've ever seen is this. For us, we have seen, we're in a cyclical business, and we've seen that 20 times in our career, 50 times in our career versus once. And it's just part of our DNA. We know that we've got to keep reinventing ourselves.
Having that track record to look back on is so beneficial, right? You can say,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
well, we've seen this before.
Yeah.
These are the things we can do and
Yeah.
to combat it, or at least,
Yep.
at least mitigate it. There's another beer that I think is pretty new. You guys call it Growler.
Yep.
And what's cool about it, it's a hazy IPA. But what's cool about it, it's a case of 12, 16 ounces, but it's the same price as like a 12-ounce case would be.
Yep.
Can you talk about that one, and how are you
Yeah,
kind of
so that
how are
was,
you able to
I
do
mean,
that?
that's another thing that, I love that side of the business, kind of trying to figure out where the market's going. And I think the consumer is under unprecedented financial stress. And, we can talk about, well, people are out spending a lot of money. Well, if you take the masses, and my kids are in their 30s, if you take housing costs and, which are skyrocketing versus what we had to pay when we were their age, and childcare and taxes, they may be earning well or earning okay, but when you get done paying all that stuff, you don't have anything left. And, we are fortunate as a family that we have no debt. We have a really strong balance sheet. And, over our 138 years, we benefited from having consumers that have always embraced us, good, bad times, et cetera. We've had so many people that have embraced us. And I just think that, our way of kind of giving back is in shrinkflation. And, you buy a bag of chips and there's 10 chips in it, and you paid $2.99 for that bag of chips. You're like, what?
It's all air.
Yeah.
What's going on
and
here?
so that, I just wanted to go the opposite way. We're putting an award-winning beer in a 16-ounce can, putting it in a 12-pack, and saying, we're going to give you 33% more award-winning beer. Here's to you.
I think it's fantastic. That way, like you said, they can still buy beer in their budget, right? It's
Yeah,
we
exactly.
don't have to forego anything. We can still add beer to put it in the cart, people.
Yeah. And, you get some people that say, 16-ounce can, it's going to get warm. 16-ounce cans don't work. I mean, I hear you, but my comment back is, so when you go into a bar, and they hand you a pint glass, do you ask them for just 12 ounces because you don't want it to get warm?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it doesn't get warm.
It doesn't.
Exactly.
Pour it into a pint glass if it makes you feel better, right? And
Yeah,
then just drink
exactly.
that.
Exactly.
I know we're winding down. We got to let you go. I would like to ask this one last thing, and Steve might have something too. But one of the coolest things, and one of the things I was most impressed with you guys, and again, 138 years old. Steve, you touched on it, being progressive, kind of keeping up with the times. You guys are 99.2% waste recycling and green energy. Sustainability. Talk about that. How are you able to do that? That is an incredible number.
I mean, breweries in general are really good at recycling, but I think that we have a real focus on it. We have a anaerobic digester, so we take all our wastewater and convert it to electricity. I would tell you when the project started, whatever, I've been in 2 of these projects, one on a board and one here, is double the cost and cut in half what the output's going to be. So it was supposed to be 40% of our electricity and $3 million. It's 20% of our electricity and $6 million. But we've always had a focus on recycling, and we have 2 people that focus all on our sustainability and recycling. And I just think that, I look around the world and see all the stuff that's going, and I think oil is a lot of the problems that we have, that our reliance on oil. And, in America, we don't help ourselves. People like to say that, they care about the environment, buy local, et cetera. They do it when it's in their interest. All you got to do is look at the number 1 selling vehicle in this country, and it's a truck. People aren't worried about where that's going, but I think that we all got to do our part to make us less dependent on others, and so that we don't get into these world issues that we're in now. And I just, I don't know. My one solution to all our world troubles, you pick a hot spot in this world, and my one answer to it is put a bunch of mothers in the room, shut the door, and say, please don't come out until you have the solution.
Yeah.
And it's not that we as fathers don't love our kids, but the egos get in the way, et cetera. I don't care who you are economically, race, nationality, et cetera. No one wants to lose a kid.
Right.
And we just got to put all this crap aside and put mothers in the room and say, please solve this for all of us. And it
would get done.
Yeah,
Yep.
It would get done.
Could you touch on real quick? You guys do. I hate to not touch on these. You guys do some awesome events during the year.
Yeah.
Could you touch on a couple? You've got the Boilermaker. You've got your Oktoberfest. You got Plogging, which
We have the
really
largest 15K in the world, which is great. And it ends at the brewery. We pour about 350 to 400 kegs, and from 9:00 in the morning till noon, we get about 30,000 people. Plogging is a thing we're doing with Weekend Warrior, where we set up running races, or not running races, setting up running groups, and we hand them bags, and they go around and pick up garbage while they run. And then we do concerts. So we've had everybody from Flaming Lips to Dropkick Murphy to Counting Crows,
Wow.
Mo, Humphreys, McGee. We get great bands.
Nice.
And then pre-COVID, we used to do a thing called Saranac Thursdays, which we had about 3,000 people down here every week, and we gave all the proceeds to United Way. And I think over the years we did that, we raised about $700,000 or $800,000. And it's just, we as a family and we as a company believe in giving back. And, for the communities that we do business in, we should give something back. Don't always be taking out of the community, give it back.
Outstanding. I do want to get up there for an Oktoberfest. You guys have
Please
a pretty
do.
good one for what I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, we
It
could
looks
always
pretty
do.
good.
We could always do a 2-parter too.
Oh, that would be so much fun.
Yes,
But we have so many other
yes,
questions.
Yes, we got a bunch. We got a bunch. We would love to have you back, man.
I'm more than happy to make it 2 parts. We could end up with 3. We could make it like a Netflix series.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Nobody would love it more than us. I promise.
That would be awesome.
Well, let's see what your audience says.
Okay.
There you go.
We want more.
Get that guy off the camera.
They haven't kicked us off yet.
That's right. They kick us before they kicked off you. Steve, anything you got?
I know we could talk more about the history and what you've done. I have a quick question. Maybe it could be brief, but I'm curious. 4th generation coming up. I mean, you've been with it obviously probably since you were a kid. Have you done everything in the brewery, including brewing the beer as well at some point in time?
I have done everything but brewing, and I know enough about brewing to be dangerous. I'm not a brewer.
That's okay.
I act like one, but I'm not a brewer. And
That's
I thought you
okay.
were going to go
Yeah.
another way. Will there be a fifth generation? And I will tell you that I think there's close to 30 fifth generation family members.
Ooh.
There's at least 3 or 4 that are interested in coming back. So there will be a fifth generation. This company's going no place but up.
So, Fred, I'll tell on myself here. That was actually a question I'm looking up. I don't usually look up there was a question I did have. Are there currently other family members working with you to keep the legacy going years from now? And you just gave us that answer.
Yeah.
So.
And the board's off family too.
Awesome.
Awesome.
We
Going
love
strong.
it.
Going strong.
We love the brand. By the way, are you coming to Tennessee? Will you be in Tennessee at some point?
I get it. I feel like I do have to go to Nashville. I'll let you know when I do.
Okay. All right. You let us know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fred, please come back and join us.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, and I'm happy to help you get us on Netflix.
We love it. We love it.
We're going to need your connections.
Remember, I'm genius. I think I can make it happen.
Everything you
touch
turns to gold.
We believe in you, Fred. We believe in you, man. Thanks a lot.